All right, we are going now to look at some layer organization, and we'll introduce adjustment layers and how they work with our good friends, Happy Mr. Pixel Layer, or Mrs. or Mix, like, you know, Pixel Layer is cool, right? Pixel Layer is like doing its own thing. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go back to Magic Photoshop and open up. We have not week 2, week 3. There we go. Hello, week 3 friends. In those demo files, we have a layer management demo file. Look at that. It's the Alps. Beautiful. Hit F on the keyboard, go full screen, hit Command plus, zoom in a little bit. So if I go over here to my layers palette, I can tell that I have not just this layer right here, but 2 others. I can click that little eyeball, hide, and show the various layers. Right? Remember, they are just like a stack of anything, right? If I have this piece of paper and I stack it on top of my phone, can I see my phone? No, I cannot. It is covered by a piece of paper. So when we do that, this mountain image is covering up that road is covering up that car. That ain't what we want. So let's drag that road layer up. Let's drag that car layer up. Now we have a car on a road in front of a mountain, which is as it should be. But our layers, look at those names. Those are awful. I don't know who made this file, but they're failing the class, failing. So let's go ahead and fix that. This one here, I'm going to double click on the name, right? Don't double click on anything next to the name, because then you get this thing and who knows what that is. Just double click on the name, and I'm going to call it car. Yep, I'm going to double click on this one, and I'm going to call it road. And then I'm going to click on this last one, and I am going to call it mountains. Oops, if I can spell mountains. Mountains from wanderyourway.com, which is where I lifted that image. Cool. So now we have those 3 images, or those 3 layers. They are named something nice and rational. That is awesome. You know what I feel like we are missing over here is that life-giving force of the sun. So I'd like to put a big happy Mr. Sun up here, right? Seems like fun. To do that, I'm not just going to go draw a sun on one of these other layers. Like, come on. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to make a new layer by clicking on what in Photoshop 2020 is a little box with a check mark on it, and what in all previous versions looked like a little post-it note. Makes a new layer called layer 1. I'm going to double click on it and call it sun, right? Because again, rename your layers. Have I harped on that enough yet? No. Sun is yellow. I'm going to come over here, double click on my color down there, and here I can drag it through the hue, right? Come down here into the yellow department. I mean, I don't know. Sure. Is that yellow? That doesn't look very yellow. It looks kind of green. There. Is that better? Oh, man. It's hard. All right. Once you've got it looking the way that you want, go ahead and click OK. And you'll see down here at the bottom that now our foreground color is yellow. Right above that, there is black and white. Those are the default foreground color and background color. There's also a little arrow. You can click that to switch foreground color and background color. We will use both default and switching a lot later on. Default is D on the keyboard. To switch foreground and background colors, X on the keyboard, but we don't need to do it right now, so we won't. Okay, we're going to come up here to my shape tool, right? Remember we drew some fun shapes last week. I'm going to select that ellipse tool. I'm going to make sure I'm in pixels up here. And I'm going to come up here and I want to draw a circle. Oh my gosh, that's not a circle. That's an ellipse. All right, so how do I draw a circle? Well, I bet if I hold down Shift, hey, there we go. There's a nice circle. Also, if I hold down Shift and Control, is that it? No, Shift and Option, right? So I'm going to click, hold down Shift and Option. That'll allow me to draw from the center, right? So if I know where the center of the sun wants to be, I can do it that way. All right, I'm going to grab my Move tool by hitting V on the keyboard, make sure I have Auto Select Layer up here, and then I can move the sun around however I might wish. You know, where it was. That seems good. All right, so now I have a layer named Sun, layer named Car, layer named Road, and those mountains. I'm going to organize them a little bit, right? Right now we only have 4 layers. That's not so hard. But as we go on and make more and more layers, it will probably get a little tricky. So I'm going to drag this up here just so it's a little bit easier to see. The way that we organize layers is we put them into groups. To do that, we use this little folder icon down here. So I'm going to click that. Right, there we go, group number 1. I'm going to double click on it and I am going to call this artificial. Right, so it's my artificial things. What's artificial in here? Well, a car and a road. That's what's artificial. So I want to put those inside of this little folder. To do that, I select both of them. Right, I can select them both by holding down the Shift key as I click on them and then drag them up into that folder. So now you'll see that they're sort of indented a little bit, and you'll also see that there is a twiddle down arrow. I can collapse that folder and it doesn't show me all the layers that are inside of it. Once we get a whole bunch of layers, organizing your stuff will be really, really important and will make your life a lot easier. I'm going to make another layer now that's going to be just my natural thing, so I'm going to call it natural. I know that what I want to have inside of it is the sun and the mountain layer. So since I know what I want inside, I'm going to hold down Shift, select both of those, and then come down here to make a new folder. And so by default, if I have layers selected and make a new group, it will put those layers inside that new group. So let's go ahead and double click on the layer name and call it natural. Cool. So now we have these 2 folders, right? All they're doing is organizing, right? You can still see everything in them, like nothing in that way changes. All they do is sort of group stuff together and allow us to open and close and hide and show them. If we close them, right, I can also grab that whole thing, come up here to Auto Select Layer, and either uncheck it, or I could put it in Auto Select Group. But now if I grab my van, it's moving all the artificial things at once because they're there in that same group. But we don't need to do that. Come back here, Auto Select Layer, yes, check. Thank you very much. Okay, so we now have got Happy Mr. Sun. Let's talk a little bit about adjustment layers. So I would like to go for a day for night kind of look. So to do this, I want to make the mountains black and white, and I want to make the sun a white disk instead of a yellow one. But I want to make the van and the road, I want to keep them in color because, you know, it's just what I'm doing. So black and white is pretty straightforward. To do that, I'm going to come back here to my layers palette. And down here at the bottom, there is a little black or white cookie looking thing. If you hover over it, it says create new fill or adjustment layer. Click on it, and it gives me a list of possible adjustment layer options. We're going to go for the one right down there called black and white. I will give you 5 minutes to guess what it does. Oh, you're right. It makes things black and white. So I did that. Poof, everything's black and white, and you can see up here in my layers, that there is now a new layer called black and white 1. It has this weird white rectangle next to it, which we'll talk about later. Black and white 1, while a fairly descriptive name, we rename everything, so I'm going to call it just overall black and white. Right, so overall meaning what does it apply to? It applies to everything. What does it do? Makes it black and white. You'll notice right now that it is inside of our artificial thing. I don't want that. I'm going to move it out. All right, so now we have overall black and white is on top of our stack, but it's still making everything black and white. That's not good. So what we want to do, right, is adjustment layers are just like pixel layers, right, in that they affect everything beneath them. So you can think of this. I have a clever idea, so hold on while I go get a prop. So, right, when we were talking about pixel layers, right, you have something goes on top of something else in that layer stack, and right, everything below it, right, this is sort of in the way. Adjustment layers are very similar, right, so they go into this layer stack, but an adjustment layer isn't pixels. It just affects what everything else looks like, right? So here I've got this piece of yellow paper. Here's my adjustment layer, right? I can still see that piece of yellow paper, but my adjustment layer has made it blue. So that's how adjustment layers work. Everything below them is affected by whatever sort of adjustment layer they are. So if I take my overall black and white and I drag it down below my car and my road, so below my entire artificial group, right? Now my overall black and white is down here below my car and my road, and right, just like here, right, the thing underneath it is affected by it. The thing above it is not. Right, the blue gel makes my yellow paper look blue, but my phone is on top of the stack and so is unaffected by the blue gel. Same thing here. Black and white makes the stuff underneath it black and white, stuff above it stays gloriously in color. And you could try moving that around and see how it all works. If I put it inside, oops, don't want to do that. Remember, if we want to move it, we want to grab it by the words. If I put it inside that folder, right, does the exact same thing. If I put it between the sun and the mountains, right, now the sun is in color. I'm going to put it back outside of that pixel group. See, even I click on the wrong thing sometimes. There we go. Okay, so we've got that there. Now, that seems pretty good. What I would like to do next, though, is because we're doing day for night, I want the sun to look like a moon. Right now, it's a big gray ball. Not really how we see the moon. I would like to, therefore, take the moon and make it a lot lighter, right? That seems like a reasonable thing to do to try and make it white. So to do that, let's see what, I'm looking at my handout over here. All right, I'm going to do that by using, in the handout I use a hue saturation layer because it has brightness to it. Sorry, I clicked this Japanese flag by mistake. And so since I did that in the handout, I'm going to do the same thing. We could also use a couple of other layers. We're going to see actually a layer, adjustment layer later today that will control some of the same stuff. But come down here, click on black and white cookie, and I'm going to go to hue saturation. And hue saturation, now we didn't do anything with it for black and white, but each adjustment layer has properties. All right, I'll stick those down here for a sec. So if I click on my overall black and white layer, it has properties that allow us to control tone with these color sliders, right? Probably remember that from Lightroom. If I go up to hue saturation, which I'm going to rename, make sun white, make the sun, my goodness, make the sun a white moon. Forgive my typos, we're just gonna roll with it. Okay, so I've got that there. I'm gonna come down here, we have hue, we have saturation. We're in black and white, so neither of these is going to do a whole lot. But if we go down to lightness, we can bring that up and it makes everything lighter, which is great. That's what we want to have happen to the moon, but God, it's doing it to everything else too, which is not what we want. Now, I have a problem here, right? Like if I can't change the order of these things, right? If I put the brightness below the sun, that only affects the mountains. That doesn't really work. If I try to move the sun underneath the mountains, and then I can put this down here and it won't affect the, yeah, but now I can't see it because it's underneath the mountains. That seems, this is a disaster. So what are we going to do? So what we want to do is to tell Photoshop, hey, this adjustment layer, only apply it to the pixels in the layer right below it, right? That seems pretty straightforward. So I just want this to affect the sun and not the other layers below it. So just that one, right? So the way that we do it is called making a clipping mask. I call it indenting because that's sort of what it looks like. To make a clipping mask, if you go and select your adjustment layer and come up to, I never use the menu on this, so I don't actually remember where it is. Ah, there we go, create clipping mask. Boom. You'll see you get that little indent, caret, and that adjustment layer now only applies to the sun. Right? I can still turn on and off, but it won't impact anything else besides that one layer. Now, the easier way to do that, instead of coming up here and saying apply, or in this case, release, clipping mask, if you come and you hover right between those two layers, right between my adjustment layer and the thing I want it to affect, and then I hold down my Option key, right? So you can see as I go right between those two layers, my cursor changes and I get this little bent arrow, and if I click then, it will indent my adjustment layer, make a clipping mask. Same thing if I hold down Option and go back there and click again, it will go away. So now we have used two adjustment layers, right? We've used one to make everything below it black and white. That's my overall black and white layer. We've used another one to make the sun brighter, but only that layer, not the layers below it. That was the making the sun white, so it looks like the moon layer. And we achieved that by making a clipping mask, which we can do most easily by holding down the Option key and putting our mouse right between those two layers and then simply clicking on it. Now I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to move that overall black and white layer inside of that natural folder. I feel like that looks a little bit neater. I can't have this one outside and have it be applied to a pixel layer inside. So keeping them both inside seems like it is the better way to go. So there you go. We have now completed this demo. So hit that, throw it on the Padlet, and we'll come back and look at some curves adjustment layers.